So, how can we motivate our learners? This is what we're learning now. How can we motivate our learners? So, we understand how Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows us that we are motivated by basic needs, physiological needs, needs for safety. Psychologically, we're motivated. And then at the highest level, the desire to fulfill something that is an interest, something that just gives us satisfaction, is a motivating factor. Let's go on. So it means then that if learners have physiological needs, if your learner wants to use the toilet, you should you should allow them to use the toilet. A lot of teachers don't like their learners to use toilets, and I really don't know why. And I can tell you a story um, of my son. I'm going to tell this story because of learners' sake. Okay, the learners' sake. Apparently, there was a time when my son was in primary school in Nigeria when his teacher did not allow him to use the bathroom. And so he peed on himself, which is a terrible thing to happen to a child because it affects the child's self esteem. Now, we didn't know that that happened. I think we got to know about it. Yeah, we got to know about it, but we did not know how far reaching that was until he became a teenager in the UK. And we noticed at one point that his urination was too frequent, always going to the toilet, always. We noticed that as he was growing older, whenever we visit a home, the first thing he will ask is, "Where's the toilet?" So it was a joke at first. But when he became a teenager, we realized that, hey, something is wrong here. This child visits the toilet too often. So we went to the GP. The GP sent us to the hospital and they started checking him with consultants. Consultants analyzed his body, they checked his body, they couldn't find anything wrong. So the consultant started questioning him. And it was such a good consultant, doctor. The consultant was able to get him to the point where he remembered what happened to him in primary school. Apparently, in your one of your schools, okay? In primary school, a teacher prevented him from using the toilet. And so, psychologically, he was affected for a long period of time to his teenage years. And the doctor said, well, once the doctor brought that out, you know, the doctor said, well, maybe that's what affected you. Do you know when my son came back with his report? When the doctor sent the report, so we find nothing wrong with his body, but we suspect that this incident is what has affected him. Once the report came, we read it out to my son. That was the end of his frequent peeing. Okay, so that is what a damage a teacher can make to a child. I'm just giving you one example of my son. Children have physiological needs. If they need a break, give them a break. If they need to pee, allow them to pee. If your school has a rule that children cannot go to pee except at certain times, then make sure that at that time the children want to pee, they should be allowed to pee. But for goodness sake, I'd rather remind my learners to pee at break time. And if a child is pressed and needs to go to the toilet, let him go. The child cannot learn. As long as that basic need is before them, they cannot learn. They cannot concentrate. You have isolated the child. You put the child in a state of torment by denying them their basic or physiological needs. So we use short breaks to motivate learners. We allow them to go and play. We don't like it when teachers take the whole break period because we want to correct a child, because you're taking their pleasure, okay? And you are demotivating them. You want to motivate them with using negative reinforcement, but actually you're damaging the child. So if you want to take the child's break, take very minimal times. Don't take the whole break. That's what we say. Don't take the whole break. That's why when we are sanctioning children, one of the sanctions they use in modern schools is detention. We don't like to do detention during the school time. It's after school. So while other learners are going, the child is detained for 30 minutes or maybe 1 hour. And that is a way of reinforcement using the parent, because the parent will have to come and pick up the child. They can't go with the school bus. And the child sits down doing nothing. That is detention for a child. But if you detain the child while lessons are going on, you're damaging the child's progression. Okay, so I'm just using those as examples of motivation. I'm just going to go quickly from now. There are intrinsic and extrinsic. We have two types of motivation, the intrinsic and then the extrinsic. Intrinsic is self actualization, is an example of self actualization where I have a satisfaction doing something. And because of that, I enjoy doing it. So I do it well. And as teachers, we can instigate that in learners. The extrinsic, we use rewards and punishments. Okay? So if you don't do this, you lose this. If you do this, I'll give you a reward. That is an example of an extrinsic motivation for you also as adults. Money, promotion, love of parents, love of this. You want recognition, so you go out of your way to be the best that you can. You're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for others. That is extrinsic motivation. You're doing it because you want to get money. Okay, that's extrinsic. But intrinsic is a motivation that is self driven, it's not driven from an external factor. It's the best kind of motivation. Okay, so let's go on quickly. Extrinsic motivation. What can you do to motivate your learners? It's not bad to motivate your learners, but you need to have the balance because research shows that if you continue to give your learners rewards for everything they do, they become laid back. That's actually the truth. So you must do it in a balanced sort of way. You can use rewards, okay, but it must not be for everything they do. All right? Set targets for them. Let it not just be so easy to get. Okay, at the early years level, the targets are less. Then we go higher and higher. Then we have negative and positive motivation, which is basically behaviorism, stimulus and response. You starve the guinea pig, it learns that you starved it because it did not go round the wheel in the experiment. So the guinea pig learns to go round the wheel so that it can eat. That's the method that some teachers still use today. But mind you, the child is not a guinea pig. He's not an animal. So why are you treating him like an animal? Okay, so reward and punishment, stimulus and response is what a lot of teachers still use. And you can use it to control behavior, yes. And in some cases, it's good, but it does not bring the kind of learning that we want in active learning. It will give you the right behaviors, it will get the child to give you the response you want, but they're not really learning as much. The quality of learning is increased or improved when we are learning through some other types of motivation. When I grow up, I want to be a teacher. That's an extrinsic motivation. It's of a higher level than inducement with rewards or punishment. Okay, how far can positive or negative reinforcement really go? And that's the point I was making a few minutes ago. Can we motivate our learners through their learning environments? Is the environment, the fact that I'm in a lovely class or in a class with a friendly teacher, will it motivate a learner to learn? Yes. Can seating arrangements affect learners? Yes. How about the materials? The lovely bright pictures or the well structured, etc.? Does it have topics that children love? Do we have illustrations with their interests, their hobbies? Football, for example, for boys. You know, what are the illustrations you're bringing into the classroom? What are the materials you're using to illustrate your mathematics? You know, does it have to be numbers all the time? Yes, we can use numbers, but we can simplify mathematics using concretization. All right. So from concretization, we can go to to reflective observation. We can observe how mathematics work. That's why we learn about numbers, we learn about shapes, we learn about all manner of things in mathematics. And when we put them all together, we learn advanced mathematics. So we can conceptualize, we can experiment in mathematics, we can concretize by demonstrating the value of what we have learned. What is ratio? What is the value of ratio in the real world? For example, in statistical analysis, What are the ratio? When you're teaching ratio, why don't you look at your classroom and say, okay, how many girls are in this classroom? How many boys are in this? Let's calculate now. What's the ratio of boys to girls in this classroom? Or what is the ratio of teachers to students in this school? Make it real, and it motivates them because suddenly they realize that it is relevant. Intrinsic motivation is the one that we really need to target. It's behavior that is driven by a sense of satisfaction or enjoyment. So there are some of you whom children love particularly. They love to be in your classroom. They are safe when they're in your classroom. When you teach them anything, they learn because they just enjoy the classroom environment you have created for them. That's an example of intrinsic motivation. When we act without any obvious inducement, no external reward is evident, but they love your classroom. They love the way you engage with them. They're looking forward to attending your lesson because they're at their best. And in your lesson, they actually want to please you. That's extrinsic, but they have a sheer enjoyment of learning. That kind of motivation is learner driven, and that's what we want to achieve. So, intrinsic motivation can also be described as behavior driven by a sense of actualization or a need to explore or learn. You know, I'm a very reflective person. I studied teacher reflection in my PhD. And throughout my master's, every weekend we had to write a reflective task. I had to reflect on my learning. Every weekend for 12 months, I was reflecting on my learning, reflecting. So I gained a sense of reflection. And then I decided to study it at PhD level. And then I also have the intrapersonal skills. Okay, I know myself. I'm a deep thinker. I think very deeply and it helps me. All right. So I have insight. Whereas people are looking and they can just see maybe 2 days ahead, I can go years ahead. Why? Because I'm reflective and I can project the consequences of my actions or my decisions probably far further than most people around me. Okay, I have intrinsic motivation because of also my personality. At this point, I'm learning for learning's sake. In 2018, 2017, I went and took a project management course. Why? Did I want a salary? Not particularly. I'd done my PhD and I was getting stale. I needed some more activity, some new learning. So I went and learned project management, and the organization made me a trainer. They paid me to train for some time. I learned business analysis, even though I'm a teacher trainer. Now, those things add up to everything I do. In my designing of projects for schools, in all of the things I do, all knowledge is useful somewhere or the other. But I've learned to learn, not because of reward, but because I have a sense of a need to explore learning, to learn more each day. And it is for me self actualization. I'm learning just because I want to learn for the pleasure of learning. That is the number one motivation you can bring to your learners by guiding them correctly. So we have intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and this is the difference as you can see. One is for enjoyment, for growth, curiosity, passion. I was curious about programming. I'm not an IT person, but I describe myself as a super user of IT. I can do so much with IT. I can build websites and things like that. My curiosity got me into programming so that I could look at it on behalf of children to see, can children do this? Yes, they can. All programming uses basically the same logic. We have if statements. We have different logics. Either or, just logic is what programming does. There are about 3 or 4 logical steps in programming. Once you know, you understand the logic, in every language, the sentence is written slightly differently, but it's computer language. The same logic is used to create all manner of computer languages. So my curiosity took me there. If children have a passion for something, if you're able to develop a passion for something you're teaching, they will learn. They will be so excited in your class. If it's fun filled, it will motivate them. Okay? If they can see a purpose, this is my path to becoming a doctor tomorrow, and you encourage that motivation in them, then they would engage some more. Remember, the children are not in school because they came on their own. You went to university. By the time you were an adult, you wanted to go to university. Okay. But now they're children. They didn't want to go to school. They were sent to school on their own. Some of them can't understand. They would rather be watching Tom and Jerry or watching another video. At the university, at the secondary level, there are some, even they are low motivated students at university levels. They just feel, oh, I'm wasting my time here. I'm just here because my parents want me to be here. My dad is rich, he has his own company. When I finish here, I don't need a degree. I'm going to be made a director of my father's company. No motivation. Okay, so extrinsic is is influenced by external factors like promotions, pay rises, bonuses, recognition from your society, prizes, perks here and there, you know. So the impact of motivation of learner is massive on learners is massive, and we need